Curiosity is a gift, but sometimes it's also a curse. In Greek mythology, that question is distilled into a single name, Pandora. The first woman shaped by the gods and the one who touched a secret humanity would never be able to forget again. With one moment of lifting a lid, the world changed color. From that point on, suffering, sickness, greed, and despair began to slip into human life like a black fog that could never be driven away. But this isn't only a story about a mistake, and Pandora isn't simply someone who brought disaster. In many versions, she is the victim of a plan set in motion long before she ever understood it, guided by the very things the gods planted inside her: curiosity, innocence, and even compassion. What has kept this legend alive for thousands of years isn't that it assigns blame, but that it reaches straight into human nature. The more something is forbidden, the more we want to know. The more afraid we are, the more we search for answers. And yet, in the middle of all that darkness, one thing still remains. Something as light as breath, but strong enough to make people rise again. Hope. That's why today we retell Pandora's box. Not to fear what we don't know, but to understand why, even when everything collapses, humanity still keeps moving forward. From very early on, the ancient Greeks were haunted by a single question. What makes human life so dazzling and yet so fragile at the same time? Before Pandora, the human world is often described as brighter and more peaceful, like a golden age untouched by want or conflict. But then something shifted. Humans began to draw closer to the power of the gods. They wanted to understand more. They wanted to do more. And that hunger was something the gods could not ignore. In many versions, the spark that sets everything in motion is Prometheus. He handed humanity something that had once belonged only to the divine: sacred fire. And fire wasn't just warmth. Fire was a tool. Fire was knowledge. It allowed humans to build, to create, and to stand a little straighter in the face of fate. But to Zeus, it was an insult. The authority of the gods had been challenged. The old order had begun to wobble. Zeus didn't want to punish Prometheus alone. He wanted to remind all of mankind that the line between mortal and divine was not meant to be crossed so easily. Prometheus understood that. So he warned his brother, Epimetheus, with a simple instruction that landed like stone. Never accept gifts from the gods. Because a gift, in the hands of those who hold power, is rarely innocent. It can be a trap wrapped in silk. It can be a test disguised in gold. And right at that crossroads, between human curiosity and divine calculation, Pandora appears. Pandora wasn't born the way other mortals were. She was made. In most versions, Hephaestus, the god of fire and the forge, shaped Pandora from clay, as if crafting the most flawless work the divine could produce. But Pandora was never just a body. She was a collection of gifts, carefully chosen and deliberately placed by the most powerful gods, designed to create someone both radiant and difficult to control. Athena set intellect and precision inside her, an ability to think clearly, to observe sharply, and hands capable of making beautiful things from the smallest details. Aphrodite gave her beauty and allure, not only in form, but in spirit and emotion. Hermes granted Pandora the power of speech, the ability to express, to persuade, and in some versions, Hermes is also the one who planted a spark of curiosity within her, paired with a warning that curiosity can lead a person to places both wondrous and dangerous. And then Zeus completed the picture. He gave Pandora curiosity as something rooted deep in her nature, the force that would push her to keep looking beyond what was right in front of her. But Zeus also placed something in her path, bound to an absolute command. The box. A strange gift, part symbol of trust, part sealed doorway. From that moment on, Pandora became the meeting point of two worlds. A being carrying the beauty of the gods, but with a heart and impulses utterly human. Pandora's box was never an ordinary object. It was heavy. It was intricately carved. In many versions, its surface even shimmered as if jewels were catching sunlight. But the most frightening part wasn't its appearance. It was the instruction that came with it. Keep it, but never open it. A short sentence, yet enough to turn the box into a living mystery, always present like a question with no answer. To Pandora, the box was like a locked door placed directly in front of her. It didn't attack her, it didn't force her, it simply stayed silent. And that silence was the pressure. The more something is forbidden, the more the mind demands an explanation. The more you're not allowed to see, the more your hands want to touch. The box began to plant something strange inside Pandora, as if something within it was waiting to be named, as if a faint sound echoed from inside, sometimes clear, sometimes distant, just enough to make it impossible for her to ignore. In another version, Zeus didn't simply give the box and watch from afar. He kept testing Pandora with signs and temptations. At times, the box seemed to glow, as if it were inviting her on its own. At times, a sudden sound would ring out like a warning, only to make Pandora think, if it needs a warning, then there must be something important inside. And from that point on, the box stopped being an object. It became a psychological battle, a fight between reason and impulse, between a command and the instinct to know. Before Pandora ever opened the box, there was one crucial link quietly holding everything together. Epimetheus. In many versions, he is a gifted titan, tied to arranging and nurturing the natural world. He is also the brother of Prometheus, the one who stole fire for humanity and paid for it with an eternal punishment. Prometheus knew Zeus wouldn't stop, so he left Epimetheus a clear instruction: never accept gifts from the gods. That warning wasn't baseless suspicion. It was the hard-earned insight of someone who had seen exactly how power works. But a warning is only as strong as the mind that remembers it. When Hermes brought Pandora, Epimetheus was overwhelmed by her beauty and her pull. In the webcomic version, he nearly forgets every promise he ever made in a single moment of fascination. Pandora didn't arrive like a threat, she arrived like a miracle. And that is exactly how the trap works best. It doesn't make you afraid, it makes you want to open your heart. Pandora slowly became the companion Epimetheus needed, a spirit on fire, full of feeling, overflowing with questions. But along with Pandora, the box entered their life as well. Epimetheus may not have noticed it, or may not have wanted to. He placed Pandora in the palace, gave her a space of her own, and in that quiet, the box began to whisper through its very silence. Epimetheus didn't open the box, but by accepting the gift, he had already opened the first door. At first, Pandora didn't think the box would become the center of her life. She arrived in the mortal world with a very human excitement. She watched everything. She asked questions. She wanted to understand why the sky changed color, why the wind shifted direction, why people laughed and then cried. But then the box began to slip in between those questions. It sat there, heavy and sealed, like a secret placed directly into her hands, while forbidding her from touching its core. Pandora wondered, what could be so valuable that it could never be seen? Why would Zeus hand it to a mortal? And why, out of everything in the world, was this one object forbidden absolutely? One question led to another. No one answered. Epimetheus might have loved her, but he couldn't extinguish the pull inside her. The curiosity the gods had given her wasn't a passing thought. It was like a small fire buried under ash. The more it was covered, the hotter it burned. Over time, Pandora began to drift toward the box, as if guided by an invisible force. Sometimes she thought she heard the faintest sound from inside. She imagined what could be within it. Treasure, prophecy, or a truth the gods didn't want humans to know. And then the most dangerous thought appeared. Just once, just a quick look, then I'll close it and everything will go back to normal. That moment of self-persuasion turned curiosity into obsession. And obsession doesn't know how to stop. And then the day came. Pandora could no longer endure the feeling of being left outside a secret too large to bear. In one version, she quietly steps away from Epimetheus, carrying the box to a hidden place, as if avoiding other eyes could somehow make the act less guilty. In another version, she doesn't open it out of selfishness, but out of mercy. She hears a cry for help in Hermes' voice, believes the messenger god has been imprisoned, and that the box is the only way to set him free. Whether the reason is curiosity or kindness, the core stays the same. Pandora believes she can control what will happen. She lifts the lid. At first, it's only a narrow crack, but the instant that line appears, everything erupts. The box stops feeling like an object and becomes a door held shut for far too long. Dark smoke blasts out. A piercing sound tears into the air. Horrid shapes, shrieking laughter, invisible forces. Everything surges forward like water bursting through a broken dam. Pandora panics. She grabs for the lid, trying to slam it shut, trying to force them back into captivity. But it's too late. Because what Zeus hid inside the box was never a gift. It was a vessel filled with every darkness humanity had never been forced to carry. And once it escaped, it didn't scatter like wind. It clung to the world. It found a home inside human hearts. And in that moment, Pandora understood a cold truth. Some things, once opened, even once, can never be fully contained again. When the box breaks open, what pours out isn't just black smoke or screaming. It is the shift of an entire age. In some versions, humanity once lived in a golden age, a world without scarcity and without conflict. But from that black fog, seeds of disaster fall like ash. And for the first time, people learn what it feels like to be worn down by life. Envy makes someone look at another person's success like a wound. Cruelty hardens the heart. Greed creates a hunger that never ends. No matter how much you have, you always want more. Then the heavier things arrive. Disease slips into the body, turning life into a long struggle. Hunger turns need into obsession, driving people to fight and fear losing what little they have. And above all, there are invisible forces that strike directly at the mind. Fear makes people tremble over what hasn't even happened yet. Despair convinces them there is no way back, no chance to repair what's been broken. These evils don't just destroy the outside world, they build a home inside every person, turning the heart into a battlefield. Pandora tries to shut the box, but evil has already spilled over like floodwater. In one telling, it even turns back on her, whispering that every suffering is Pandora's fault, that the entire world will curse that name forever. And here, the tragedy becomes unmistakable. The box doesn't only release disasters, it creates something even more terrifying. Guilt and self-condemnation. The kind of prison that can trap a person in darkness longer than any wall ever could. After the eruption, Pandora was left with only a crushing silence and the feeling of collapse. She had watched evil pour out, had tried to stop it, and had failed. But in the very deepest moment of despair, a different sound came from the box. No more horrific hissing, no more cold laughter, just a faint little clink, like a fragile breath moving through ash. It didn't threaten her. It felt like reassurance. And it was that gentleness that made Pandora hesitate, and then step closer once again. She opened the box a second time. From inside, a warm light rose up, not blinding, but soft, like a small flame in the night. It drifted out, slid through the air, and left the box like a living thing. Pandora realized this wasn't what Zeus wanted her to see. This was what remained, the one thing that hadn't escaped in the first wave of chaos. It was hope. In one version, Pandora is able to touch it, to draw it out like the last thread pulled from darkness. In another, hope lifts itself free, but still leaves behind the feeling that pain is not the end. Hope doesn't erase disease, hunger, or greed. It doesn't make evil disappear. But it does something more important. It gives humanity a reason to stand back up.
When fear freezes us, hope reminds us we can still move forward. When despair tries to lock the future shut, hope opens a narrow crack for light to slip through. And from here, Pandora's story turns. It stops being only a tragedy about a box that was opened. It becomes an explanation for why, even with a world full of scars, humanity never stops trying to heal. When you look back at the full story, one thing becomes clearer and clearer. The box didn't appear on its own, and Pandora didn't choose on her own to become the one who carried it. In many versions, Zeus lays the foundation for the tragedy from the beginning. He is humiliated because Prometheus gives fire to mankind. Humans begin to build, to craft, to grow up. They fear the gods a little less, and to Zeus, that is a dangerous sign. The old order is starting to shake. So he doesn't just want to punish a titan. He wants to teach all of humanity a lesson about limits. The box becomes the perfect tool because it strikes at the most universal weakness of all: curiosity. But Zeus doesn't rely on a prohibition alone. In the telling from Hermes' point of view, he also manipulates constantly. He makes the box more enticing, makes temptation appear in dreams, in signs, in promises of knowledge and glory. And when curiosity still isn't enough, he uses something stronger: compassion. Zeus creates an illusion of Hermes trapped and calling for help, forcing Pandora into a choice where opening the box to save someone feels like the only path. That is the cruelest point of the trap, turning an action that seems merciful into the key that unlocks disaster. So is Pandora guilty? The story doesn't hand down a simple verdict. Pandora had a choice, and she chose. But that choice was placed inside a maze that had already been built. Curiosity planted deep in her nature, the box put directly into her hands, and temptation fed to her day after day. Maybe that's why this legend doesn't exist to condemn a woman. It exists to warn about power and guidance, about how a system can manufacture a mistake and then dump all responsibility onto someone weaker. And at the same time, it reminds us that humans are not only victims of darkness, because Pandora, after opening the box, is still the one who reaches hope. Pandora's box is often mentioned as a warning. Don't touch what you don't understand. But if that's all it is, the story becomes too simple. Because humans cannot live without asking questions. Curiosity is what pushes us forward, what drives us to explore, to learn, and to change the world. The problem is that curiosity always has two faces. It can open the door to knowledge, and it can open the door to consequences. When Pandora lifted the lid, she didn't just release evil. She also exposed an uncomfortable truth. There are some doors that, once opened, can never be closed the way they were before. And what escaped doesn't vanish. Disease still exists. Greed still clings to humanity. Fear and despair remain familiar shadows in history. The world, in these versions, carries permanent scars. And Pandora herself is never fully freed from guilt. But the story doesn't end with punishment. It ends with something smaller but more enduring: hope.
Hope is not a miracle that erases darkness. Hope is the ability to stand up while the darkness is still there. And that's why this myth leaves us with one final question, like a mirror held up to the present. When we face the unknown, will we dig all the way to the bottom, or will we know when to stop? When we make a mistake, will we drown in guilt, or will we look for a way to repair what we've done? Pandora opened the box, and the world was never the same. But she also released hope, the one thing even the gods cannot take back from humanity. And maybe that is the true core of the story. In any age, what keeps people alive isn't avoiding every mistake, but the ability to keep moving after a mistake, with hope still burning.